been a really outstanding year in which we have brought 4 different lectures to you guys talking about how climate change is happening, why it's happening, and how it's impacting human health through extreme heat, through wildfire smoke and the damage to our air, how healthcare is contributing to this problem. And today we're going to be focusing on bringing it back home and looking at some of our local partners who are working in sustainability and what we're doing in the city of Boise to combat climate change. 2023 will bring hopefully a 6-part lecture series that we're going to continue with St. Luke's and Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health working together, expanding into new topics and new locations as well. We are looking at partnering with the University of Idaho's ECHO program as a new sharing platform. So stay tuned either through the Idaho Clinicians for Climate and Health website or by staying in touch with us at sustainability@slhs.org. I want to thank the more than 250 participants we've had through this 4-part lecture series for joining us and all the outstanding speakers we've had along the way. I'm going to turn things over to Stephanie Wicks now to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Sims. As Ethan just said, we're really excited to welcome our partners, some prestigious partners that we've been working with throughout the year, the City of Boise, Idaho Power, and Boise State. And each leader is going to be talking about different aspects of their climate and their goals that they're setting for themselves. And first, we're going to hear from Steve Burgos. He's the Public Works Director for the city. He manages various utilities, including wastewater, recycled water, stormwater, solid waste, and geothermal, all of which we work with. But prior to joining the city, he was a vice president at Brown and Caldwell, focused on water and wastewater. And prior to that, he was in the U.S. Navy as an intelligence officer. He graduated from Duke and lives here in Boise with his 3 kids. And enjoys backpacking, mountain biking, and being outdoors, which we all enjoy here in Boise. We're in Idaho, and that's one of the reasons why this is so important to Idaho. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Dr. Sims, and really honored to be here and excited to talk about what the City of Boise is up to regarding our climate initiatives. And this has been something we've been working on for the last several years. And it started really probably a decade ago, but we really started picking up the pace back in 2016. And I just want to give you a quick overview. Back in 2016, we engaged University of Idaho to start really getting a sense for what was it that we were going to face specifically in Boise and the Treasure Valley, what we were going to face as a result of the changing climate. What were some of the issues that we needed to better understand and then therefore start to develop solutions around. So you can see the slide here. This is our Boise Climate Adaptation Assessment. Out of that assessment, there were approximately 20 some climate models that were run by Dr. John Abatzoglu, who was up at that time at the University of Idaho. And what we found were kind of 8 key issues that came out of that adaptation assessment. I won't read them for you. I just want to highlight a couple of points related to the issues that come out of climate change for Boise. One is that of those 8 issues that you see on the slide, 6 are somehow related to water. And that's not a surprise. I think a lot of us know that water supply issues in the Treasure Valley are a growing concern. It's good that we understand that now so that we're not waiting around for a crisis and we can take those proactive steps. But that's something that jumps out to us when we see that list. And then there's other things on the list like heat stress days. It sounds like you covered earlier in one of the lecture series. Those are going to become very real issues for us. Some of the stats related to the amount of heat and high index days that are coming for the city of Boise are going to significantly increase by the middle part of the century. So those are issues related to not just climate, but health and equity and environmental justice outcomes that we're going to be looking at as part of our climate action roadmap that I'll get here to in a second. So for us, this helped lay the foundation of what are the issues that we want to start developing solutions around. And how do we start getting our arms around what are the things that we want to work on into the future related to the climate adaptation assessment? So shortly thereafter in 2017, 2018, we started working on what we refer to as Boise's energy future. And frankly, we didn't pivot immediately to a climate action roadmap at that point. Back in 16 and 17, I think there were still questions about climate issues. I don't know that we are kind of where we are today in 2022. I think it's fairly well accepted that climate change is real, that we are warming, and those issues are going to affect us. back in 2016, 17, there still probably were some questions. So we decided at the city, why don't we start with our energy future? Why don't we frame up what we see as how we start to integrate renewable energy and what's a goal that we can associate with our energy future? And then subsequent to that, in 2019, we started working on what we refer to as our climate action roadmap. And that's really starting to get into the nuts and bolts of what are the activities, the actions that we want to take related to those impacts that you saw on the climate adaptation assessment. So those two documents led to setting very specific goals related to climate issues or related to clean energy. And so they interact in a way that puts the onus on city government first. We have talked from the very beginning of our climate work that if we're going to ask the community to take on some of these issues, whether it's the development community, whether it's small businesses, residents, we better have walked the talk internally. And so you'll see here where we set goals for either clean electricity or carbon neutrality, we start first with our organization. In part because we can experiment on things within city government and prove up and or hopefully share those things that aren't working quickly so others don't make the same mistakes. So you can see here, we've made a commitment to be 100% clean electricity for city government by 2030. City government's committed to being carbon neutral by 2035. And then pivoting to the broader community of Boise, the broader city of Boise, we want to be 100% clean electricity by 2035 and then carbon neutral by 2050. And so those are very specific targets. In the climate action roadmap, we developed very technical analyses to determine how we're going to get there. For example, on the 2050 carbon neutral goal, there's a bunch of different, we call them wedge diagrams that we've developed that tell us, okay, in this sector, we'll be able to reduce this much when we start embracing this technology. One of the interesting things that came out of our study, and is pretty consistent across the US for cities doing this work, is that there's about a 15 to 20% chunk that we don't have answers to yet. So that's where we're going to be relying on development of technology and experimenting with new things, new concepts to get to that 15 to 20%. So these goals interact, starting with the city of Boise. We're going to be the ones trying to accomplish these first and make those sharings with the community. So what have we been up to? So first, let me state that my boss is pressing to try to get our city government goal met by 2023. I don't know if we're going to get there. That's a stretch goal. But we're working with our partners at Idaho Power to figure that piece out. We think we'll be able to get a chunk of the way there, but maybe not 100%, but we're going to be pushing hard to try to do that. So trying to set the example, set the pace, and set up mechanisms for others to access ways to get access to renewable energy that others can replicate. So again, pushing on to 2023. So how are we going to get there? How are we going to accomplish these goals? We go back to our climate action roadmap. And so these are the priority areas that we're working on within the climate action roadmap. And they kind of have a continuum if you look at them. Over on my far left, we're focused on what are the activities that help reduce emissions, that help get our carbon emissions under control. On the right are our resiliency emphasis. There's things that are kind of in the works that are going to happen. The die is cast on certain issues. We can't undo those at this point. So what are the actions that we're going to take to actually deal with those issues that were just part of climate change that are our reality in Boise? So if you look at that continuum, for example, energy and buildings, that's where we're going to be focusing on GHG reductions, the carbon reductions. On the far right, things like water resiliency. We're going to be setting up programs to try to develop resilient water supply. So let's talk about some specific examples on these, the continuum of actions related to climate. And these are a lot of pictures. I'll quickly walk through these. On the far left, you see the geothermal system. The city of Boise has the nation's largest geothermal system downtown. That's an incredible foundation for us to build upon. That's a local source of energy. We pull the water out from the aquifer, we take off the heat, we put it back in the aquifer. It's a circular loop. How do we build upon that? So we're reaching out to the Idaho National Lab, who's the lead lab for geothermal energy. And we just applied for a Department of Energy grant to do some research and development on our geothermal system to start looking at how can we start using it year round. Right now it's a heating district for the most part, but we want to start looking at how do we exploit that and use it year round potentially. The upper left there, we have the trash trucks. That's an all electric trash truck that you're looking at. That's one of the first in the nation to be in the Republic Services fleet. In fact, that's the first one in the Republic Services fleet nationwide. That's performing really well. It's coming back off the routes with about a 15%, 20% charge remaining in the batteries. Because that good performance is happening, we're going to be adding more to the fleet. I think we're adding up to 5 this year and additional ones in the fleet. You'll see them downtown. It's weird because they're really quiet. You see a trash truck coming, it's like, I should hear something, but I don't. It's related to the battery storage right on the truck. The bottom center picture is our 20-mile south farm. We own and operate a 4,300-acre farm at the city where we take the biosolids from the water renewal facilities. And yes, that is what you think it is. And we land apply that at the farm for local crop production. We decided to experiment at the farm with Idaho's first net zero commercial building. And so that picture is our admin and our maintenance building down there. That is actually a net positive energy building. We're producing more energy than we're using. We're taking those electrons and running some pivots at the farm off that additional energy. That's been an experiment, and we've learned a lot, and we've been sharing that out with the community on the kind of the pluses and the minuses, what were the upfront capital costs, payback periods, et cetera. The upper middle picture is the Orange Energy Bag program that we have. We're the first city to scale up the Orange Energy Bag program here in Boise. That company that we're working with currently is called Bifusion, and they're taking our energy bag material and turning them into building blocks. And they have now, I think, we're meeting 8 ASTM standard specifications on construction. And we'll see if in fact, as we work with them, they might be able to locate their first manufacturing facility in Boise. Hasn't been decided yet, but we're working to see if we could do that because we have that supply here in Boise. On the lower right, we have temperature issues on the Boise River. That's not breaking news in the Northwest. You probably heard about the Columbia River Basin, the Columbia River, when they had the really hot summer, we had a lot of fish kills. Similarly, we have temperature issues on the Boise River. We are looking to do restoration projects up and down the river, natural habitat restoration, side channel restoration, to promote trout fisheries, but also start to deal with those temperature issues. And then last but not least, on the water side, we've initiated the recycled water program. We haven't done that in the city yet. We are going to pilot some new technology this spring in partnership with Micron Technologies in the Southeast to start the baseline of testing recycled water, how the technology performs on their industrial wastewater. And the hope is by middle part of this decade, we'll have a recycled water program up and running. That's important. That's drought-proof water. And as we start to see the challenges coming for our city, both from growth, but also from drought, we need to be proactive. We're not waiting around for a crisis. So those are some of the actions we're taking around climate. And those are great, but in the end, data and moving the needle is what this is going to be about. It can't just be the projects per se. We got to actually start measuring what's happening in the community and within the city government. So I want to share with you two tables here. One is our community citywide Boise greenhouse gas emissions. And this inventory is from 2015 to 2021. And we're really happy to report that we've been trending in the right direction in Boise on our carbon emissions. When you think about the growth that's been happening in the city, that's a really good story. We are headed in the right direction. And year over year, 2020 to 2021, we're down about 3% on our carbon emissions. And you can see how we calculate those and what compiles the different sectors that make up our larger carbon emissions. A great story for our community. We're headed in the right direction. For city government, it's an interesting kind of back and forth that we've been experiencing. Some of that's the operations within the city. We have large water renewal facilities, take a lot of electricity, a lot of energy. But we're really happy to report we just got the 2021 numbers back probably about a month ago. We're down about 21% year over year on our carbon emissions for city government. So again, it's really important to us. We're very passionate about us doing it first to show that it's possible. So we're committed to it and we're making progress. We had some blips and we'll continue to have some bobbles up and down, but what we're hoping to do is have that trend leading to that 2035 number for us as a city government of carbon neutrality. And then for the community of 2050, that downward trend leading to that carbon neutrality. So before I wrap up, I do want to just mention this is about climate and health. And in the Climate Action Roadmap, we are very intentional about discussing this openly. Part of our Climate Action Roadmap had guiding principles that we identified that were going to be part of the solutions that we look at. So every solution we'll look at through the lens of how do we advance equity? How do we grow a climate economy? And then important for you all is how do we improve health and wellness? So we want to partner with St. Luke's. We want to partner with our healthcare providers. We think there is a very direct link between climate outcomes and healthcare. It's becoming pretty obvious, right? I think all of us are starting to connect those dots. So we want to leverage our climate action to improve air quality where we can, indoor, outdoor, benefit physical activity and nutrition, and that mental health resilience, open space, those types of things are really good for mental health. So we think there's lots of potential for collaboration. We're excited about the fact that St. Luke's is sponsoring this and bringing this conversation to the community. It's sorely needed, and we want to be part of the solution, and we're excited about partnering with you all moving forward. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was outstanding and really inspiring to see what the city is doing to lead us going forward. Natalie's going to come fix it. Okay, so you don't need to see me talk, so let me just talk, and I will introduce our next speaker, Adam Richens. Adam, if you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen so you can get your slides up and going while I say nice things about you. So Adam Richens is the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Idaho Power. He was named the Senior Vice President and COO in October of 2019, and prior to that, he served as Vice President of Customer Operations and Business Development. In this role, he oversaw teams dedicated to customer satisfaction and supporting the company's brand. Since joining Idaho Power in 2011, Richens had previously held positions of General Manager of Customer Operations, Engineering and Construction, and was Senior Counsel. He previously worked as an engineer and project manager on large construction projects and as an attorney at Stoll Reeves, where he litigated complex business disputes and negotiated multi-million-dollar commercial transactions. Richens has also clerked for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals with the Honorable Stephen S. Trott and worked as an engineer on large construction projects, including airports and schools. He holds 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, one in mathematics from the University of Puget Sound, and a second in civil engineering from Columbia University, where he graduated magna cum laude. He earned his law degree from the University of Washington with high honors and graduated from the Harvard Business School's Advanced Management Program in 2016. He serves on the board of St. Alphonsus, which we're also excited to bring into the fold in the sustainability world, Boise Schools Foundation, and the Boise Chamber of Commerce and Pacific Northwest Utilities Conference Committee. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today, Adam, and tell us all about what Idaho Power is doing.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me all right? Just checking. Can you guys hear me okay? Dr. Sims? Good to go?
Yes, good to go.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me today. Before I get started on my presentation, I did just want to say how much of a pleasure it's been working with Steve Burgos, his team, the mayor, and the city of Boise in general. I can't say we always agree on everything, but we always respect each other's opinions. And I think perhaps more importantly, we've always partnered, especially in the last 5 years or so, where we can, which I think has helped the city as a whole. And one other quick thing, because this is a St. Luke's event, I also want to thank all the healthcare workers out there. It has been a tough couple of years for you all, and just want to say we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude. I always like to start my clean energy talks with a photo of baby McKenna, and McKenna is an Idaho Power baby. Her mom is in the upper right hand corner, and her mom is a regional manager for the company. So today we're going to talk about McKenna's life in the context of clean energy. So in a lot of ways, McKenna's life is going to be a lot like many of ours. She's going to, walk at 14 months. Her mom, Angelique, is a really good softball player. So she is going to go play softball at about 7 years old. Of course, she's going to become a teenager and start driving. My 15-year-old has started driving, so God help us a little bit. But she's going to go to college, at age 18. And then she's going to, enter the real world and start doing real work. So in a lot of ways, this seems pretty basic, right? I mean, we all did this, but I will submit to you that McKenna's world is going to be very different in a lot of different ways. And perhaps, one of the ways her life will be different is in her access to clean energy. Now, right now in 2020, McKenna's energy, what she is using is actually very clean. This is a look at Idaho Power's energy portfolio, an average over the last 3 years. And as you can see, clean hydroelectric generation is a big part of our energy mix. Just to kind of as a side note, we've been in a drought the last 3 years, but generally our portfolio is, around 40 to 50% hydro. Our energy mix also includes another 20% of clean energy from wind and solar and geothermal. You can see that in the green and other sources where we sell the renewable energy credits. Less than 30% of the energy right now comes from fossil fuels. And just a quick look at how that compares to the national average. The national average is more like 60%. And again, we're 30% or less, depending on the year. So in the future, we're hoping to get even cleaner for McKenna. And here is a look at 23-year-old McKenna. And our goal is to be 100% clean by McKenna's 23rd birthday in 2045. So a lot of folks don't know this, but we were actually the second investor-owned utility in the nation to develop this type of voluntary goal. And of course, the first question is why? And the first why is we do believe it's achievable. This is a look at the decline in prices for clean technologies over the past decade. And I have to say, it really has been remarkable, especially for this last item, which is really what makes clean energy possible for a lot of us. Getting a little bit of feedback there. I'm not sure if the mute's on, but I can say this 85% for battery storage technologies. Not a lot of people predicted this kind of decline in costs, and certainly it has happened from 2010 to 2020. The second reason we went this direction is our customers, generally speaking, we believe want it. And so how do I know that? Well, in 2019, we surveyed Idaho Power customers throughout the service territory, and we asked this question: how many of you want us to be 100% clean by 2045? And pause for a second, curious what people would think, just thinking to yourself, but remarkably, almost 90% of folks said, yes, we want you to do that. And to me, that feels like overwhelming support in this regard. Of course, we didn't stop there. We then asked the next question is, would your answer still be yes if your bill went up 5%? And guess what happened there? Here are the results. That 90% dropped to 27.7% for a 5% increase. And for a 10% increase, it went to 18.9%. And you can see the rest of it. So it's clear to us that Idaho Power customers want clean energy. They just don't want to pay more for it. And certainly that is the task we have. Affordability is clearly a challenge we need to continue to focus on and overcome at Idaho Power. But that's actually not even the biggest challenge that we're faced with. The biggest challenge is pretty simple, and it is weather. It's Mother Nature, and it's the fact that the wind does not always blow and the sun does not always shine when you need it. And a lot of folks don't know this, but utilities don't readily store electricity. In fact, less than 1% of electricity used in the world is stored in what you'd consider batteries. So let's dive into that just a little bit more. This is a map of the Pacific Northwest, and it was during the 2021 heat dome. I don't know if you all remember that, but it was extremely hot day. It was an extremely hot week. And the numbers on this chart represent how much the temperatures were above average temps during that time. So if you look at the number 34, it was 34 degrees above average at that point, kind of near the Portland, Seattle area. This was a 1 in 1,000 year event in the Pacific Northwest. And temperatures were at 110 plus degrees in Portland and Seattle. So it's days like these that our grid operators are on edge a bit. This is a picture of our control room. And again, I'm not sure most people know this, but we have operators that sit in this room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, making sure that we have the exact right amount of energy at all times for customers. The electricity business is the ultimate real-time business. When you flip the switch on the wall, that energy that lights that bulb was produced a fraction of a second ago, and it travels to you. It gets kind of close to the speed of light. I always use the number 186,000 miles per second. It's not exact, but it travels to you very quickly at 100, 200, 300 miles away. And your demand and the supply that we provide need to match each other every moment of every day. Otherwise, the entire system collapses. And as I just said before, utilities don't store energy, so it has to be real time. And this chart puts even a finer point on it. This is a typical summer day in Idaho. And you can see the loads or the customer demand on the left. The blue line represents the customer energy needs. So you can see as people wake up in the morning, they turn on their lights, they turn on their air conditioner, manufacturers start producing goods, the customer need and what we call the load goes up. And hydro is a really good resource because we can ramp our hydro facilities up and down. You just put more water through the turbine as customer demand increases. Wind and solar are also very good resources. And again, their prices have gone down a lot, but they're intermittent. So as you can see from this chart, the green being the wind, the red being solar, the right axis, wind at the time we need it the most, at the highest demand we have at that point, at 1800 hours, our peak at that time, wind is close to zero, almost zero. Solar is more predictable, but the timing of solar is not perfect. So the problem I always like to say that we're trying to solve for is this yellow area. When the sun goes down, as you can see it doing between 1800 and 2000 hours, we still need a lot of power. And right now, natural gas is a big part of that solution. So the question is, what will the solution be in the future? And we believe this technology is really going to help us. It's just large batteries, lots and lots of large lithium-ion batteries stacked up in large containers. And when the sun goes down, we then release energy from those batteries for a period of 4 hours from about 8 o'clock to around midnight. And we believe these batteries are going to help us very well in the summer, help us decarbonize. And we're seeing some of that in California and some other areas. The problem is days like these, days like we've honestly had this last week, where there's extended periods of no sun, not a lot of wind. And on days like these, the question is, how do you charge the battery, 4-hour battery, with renewable energy? And by the way, as you all know, days like these can last many, many days, can be even weeks. And lithium ion storage is generally only a 4-hour product. It only releases energy for 4 hours and then it has to be charged again. It's days like these that start to be a problem in our models. And our models show us getting to 80 to 85% towards the end of the decade over the next few years. But then again, winter becomes a problem. So we need additional technologies and infrastructure. So what are they? So here's McKenna thinking about a variety of different technologies. And the first one is actually an old technology. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's very important to decarbonization, and it's transmission lines. So transmission lines are the highways that move energy around. When you're driving out in the desert and you see those big lines spanning for miles and miles, those are transmission lines. And studies show that in the United States, we need 3 to 4 times more transmission lines than currently exist to meet our 100% goals. So why do you need that? You need it because you need to be able to move clean energy around where it's needed, when it's needed. So we need to move high capacity factor wind from Wyoming, which is shown in the purple chart, to the west. We need to reach down to the south in the winter and tap into the intense solar down there. And of course, we need to be able to tap into the Pacific Northwest and the great hydro resource we have there. So that is our plan. You can see different lines that we're planning on the right chart, and we're planning to build these lines to meet that need. And so, of course, I'm saying transmission is important. What are others saying? Everyone from top energy consultants to the federal government to to past FERC chairs are writing and tweeting about the importance of transmission. It is absolutely essential to get into our decarbonized future. Another option that we are just starting to explore, it's early, and I won't get into the details here because we don't have a ton of time, but are small modular nuclear reactors. And you can look at here's a timeline of different reactors that are planning to be installed in the Pacific Northwest over the next decade. These reactors, at least as planned, are anticipated to be more economic, safer, smaller, and more flexible than traditional nuclear. So certainly that's on our mind as well. The last possible technology I'll talk about is hydrogen. And the idea here is that you use clean energy resources. So it might be hydro, solar, wind, and others to power electrolysis. And in the electrolysis process, you then separate hydrogen from oxygen. and then you burn hydrogen just like you'd burn natural gas. So the beauty of that is, in theory, you can store the hydrogen, burn it when you need it. So weather, again, doesn't become as big of an issue. Same with SMRs. Another technology that's not so new that we're looking at pretty heavily this year is geothermal. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. I don't have a slide on it, but certainly Idaho has a great resource there. So in 15 minutes, tried to do this really quick and sum it up, but transmission, small modular nuclear reactors, hydrogen, maybe some geothermal, all those things don't depend on the weather. And so we're hopeful that these technologies will help us get to that future, decarbonized future that we're all hoping for. So thanks for your time, and look forward to hearing from everybody else on the panel.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for the great questions. I am recording those, and Adam, you've got 2 good ones. So I hope you're ready for the Q&A session.
Great, thanks.
You bet. I'll keep us moving. I'd like to introduce Dr. Susie Arnett from Boise State. And I think what I'm hoping to hear is the voice of the youth, and what are people talking about on university campuses, and what do they want to learn about, and what do they expect of the universities that they're going to. So Dr. Susie Arnett is the Executive Director of Environmental Health and Safety and Sustainability at Boise State. She's been in that position since 2016. One of her main primary goals was to develop a student-focused sustainability program that includes interdepartmental collaborations and establishing opportunities to work with industry and community partners. Susie's team works to keep the university in compliance and environmental occupational safety, building safety, fire safety, and laboratory safety regulations. Susie joined Boise State in 2012. She was previously the Assistant Director of Environmental Health and Safety at University of Virginia. She holds a bachelor degree in chemistry from Berry College in Rome, Georgia, and a PhD in combinatorial. I'm going to need help with that.
Combinatorial, yes.
Thank you. That's a tough one for me. From the University of Virginia. She was born and raised in Boise. She enjoyed spending time with her family, camping, baking, and playing tennis. So with that, we'll transition to Dr. Arnett. Thank you. And I think you can share.
Okay, let's see. Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Let's see if I can. Okay. Thank you for having me. I am very excited to be here to talk to you about how we are moving forward with sustainability at Boise State. It's been a big undertaking. It's been ongoing for a number of years. And, I think in the last 3 to 5, it's really taken off, and we have a lot of exciting things happening on campus. Maybe. Okay, so sustainability at Boise State actually started back in 2005 with the creation of a green team. And as you can see from this timeline, we've had kind of a lot of stops and starts. Signing the President's Climate Commitment Agreement back in 2007. We did our first greenhouse gas inventory in 2008. And then just ongoing efforts to start these sustainability initiatives across campus since 2013. And then in 2020, Dr. Tromp signed an executive order creating a Sustainability Governance Council, which the idea was to try and centralize the sustainability efforts on campus. And we joined the ASHE, or Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education initiative, and submitted our first STARS report in 2021, where we received a silver rating, which was thrilling to the folks on campus that have been working hard in sustainability all these years. Our recent accomplishments include finalizing our sustainability action plan, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. We're getting it ready to release to the campus. And we also this year just launched the School for the Environment. And that's very exciting for the folks on the academic side. We also have a grand challenge on our research and creative activity side that's focused on sustainability. So a lot of things happening on campus. Why are we moving forward so diligently with sustainability? It comes down to the students. Our students have an expectation that we address climate change and provide research opportunities on how we're going to handle that locally, participate in worldwide initiatives. And the feedback that we're getting from the students is that they want to see more of it. So we had a survey done this past spring on sustainability, literacy, and opinion. And 72% of the responding students think that there should be more of a focus on sustainability in their courses. So they're asking for it. And the university is working really hard to deliver those opportunities and those topics so that the students can learn more about it, because they understand this is what they're going to be living with, and they need to know how they can help, or where they can make a difference. We've also seen our neighbors, local community, industry partners, the country and the world making these very public commitments. We view it as a research university as an opportunity for innovation. We have what we call blue turf thinking. That's kind of cutting edge research in those opportunities to explore new ideas for energy storage and batteries and all of those fun subjects that the researchers, it's like, hey, what will happen if we do this? And so let's go try it out. We also have the opportunity, we have some great neighbors in industry here, Micron and INL, that we could potentially partner with. And we look forward to partnering with them should the opportunity come up in different ways. We're also in the midst of a unique time where there's the potential for a significant amount of federal funding for projects improving resiliency, renewing our infrastructure, and addressing sustainability that's going to be awarded in the form of grants. And we really want to make sure that we're competitive in competing for those grants. And also it comes back to when students step on campuses, they and their parents are during their tours looking to see what colleges and universities are doing in regards to addressing climate change and becoming more sustainable, because they want to know that, we're thinking about how we can help the planet and not just consume resources. Our recent strategic plan that we call the Blueprint for Success has been a common thread throughout. That is sustainability. We specifically call it out as a strategy under Foster Thriving Community. It's exactly what it sounds like: foster a sustainable campus that is both environmentally and socially responsible, as well as economically feasible. So taking care of our local environment, being socially responsible, and then making sure that we're doing the best that we possibly can with our taxpayer dollars. We've identified it as one of the grand challenges under our advancing research and creative activity goal. So making sure that, the folks that want to collaborate across campus on these ideas, we bring those experts in those fields together so that they have those resources to move ideas forward, or be able to collaborate with outside entities. And we're also trying to encourage our community partners to reach out to us if they have an idea, because we may have a researcher that could pair up with that person and go, hey, let's do something great, and provide those opportunities and that environment for organic relationships to develop. Right now, our biggest challenge on campus, I would say, is the fact that we have so much going on. I borrowed a phrase from Georgia Tech when they were describing their sustainability initiatives back in 2015, these random acts of green. Every time we turn around, we have these conversations where we hear about somebody doing something else. And so we want to make sure that we're bringing folks together and leveraging the resources that we have and the expertise that we have. Because right now this collaboration is relationship dependent and opportunistic. And And we really are trying to harness all of that exciting energy and those opportunities into more of an organized structure. Similar to this is where we would like to go. We want to make sure we have a intentional, cohesive sustainability effort that's measured and communicated. It follows a shared governance model, and that we emphasize integration with campus, the academic side and our research side of campus. We want to promote the use of the campus as a living lab and giving our students the opportunity to conduct research on real systems and use those opportunities to get jobs in the future because they have more functional experience versus just the theoretical. Some recent achievements that I'll briefly touch on campus. We are pursuing LEED certification on a new residence hall that we're building. This will be the first building on campus that we will design and build to LEED standards. And this will be probably our first building on campus where we will be able to actually have data and be able to measure the savings associated with the systems that we put in place in that building. This is very exciting to us. We are trying to include geothermal as much as possible. As previous speakers have mentioned, we have an amazing resource in geothermal, and taking advantage of that is important to the campus and our energy goals. We want to, so far across campus, and we have multiple buildings on geothermal. I think we have approximately 19. But we've avoided generating over 1,000 metric tons of CO2 by using that geothermal. So making sure that we're thinking about those decisions as we're building or renovating new spaces, old spaces, then, you know, we have that available to us. We need to take advantage of it. Working on reducing our fleets to what we need, and then moving towards electrification. As I mentioned before, the creation of the School of the Environment and creating those opportunities for faculty and staff to participate in interdisciplinary research, innovation, and work with the students to encourage their development of ideas and opportunities out there. Expanding our student opportunities through engagement. We have a number of clubs related to the environment and to sustainability and the climate, and we want to make sure that students know about those and have the opportunity to participate in those. Earth Week on campus. We used to have Earth Day, and now it's Earth Week, and it's very involved, and there's panels for folks to participate in, student forums where they can display what they've been working on and that sort of thing. So it's really exciting to see the creativity that the students have across campus. And then working with students and our on-campus housing to reduce waste along with the events. You can see here we have a picture of some students that did the recycling at the Garth Brooks concert back in 2019. And they were doing this by hand, and they were able to recycle approximately 1,700 pounds of cans and bottles during that initiative, which is very exciting. We also want to expand our campus collaboration. And as I mentioned, the Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge and the School of the Environment are just two really, I guess, current initiatives that are going on, but we have some that have been going on for years. So what is our vision for sustainability at Boise State? We've set some strategic goals, centralizing our campus sustainability efforts to try and get a handle on what's happening on campus, using our campus as a living laboratory, making sure that the students have the opportunity to be engaged in meaningful campus projects, and then setting some measurable and actionable goals. Working within what the city has set as a goal for being carbon neutral by 2050. We're part of the community. We need to be part of that goal. So we've said that we would like to be carbon neutral no later than 2050 also. And using an energy and utility roadmap that was conducted, their advice was, or their recommendations included expanding our use of geothermal, investing in energy efficiency as much as possible. And so those are things that we will be looking at as we renovate labs on campus and improve systems and replace systems and that sort of thing. Expanding our fleet electrification, expanding alternative transportation options, and working with our community partners on how we can do that. I know right now our transportation and parking folks have been providing rides to students to the airport and stuff so that they don't have to drive and park their car up there. We are working on reducing potable water consumption. We have some irrigation systems that are still on city water that we're trying to get off of city water as fast as we possibly can. And then piloting new and expanding our existing waste reduction and diversion programs. And those, I would say, are enough for today. There's a lot going on that I could talk for a long time.
Thank you so much, Susie. That was really outstanding. Great to see what our partners at Boise State are doing to lead the way. Our final presenter is from St. Luke's. I know we're running a bit late. We're going to continue this presentation and continue recording. So if you have to take off, please come back and watch the recording, because there's going to be a question and answer session that I think is going to give some really interesting insights to some of the other great work these guys are doing. So representing St. Luke's today is Dr. David McCluskey. Dr. McCluskey is a general surgeon currently practicing at St. Luke's in Wood River. He's a fourth generation Idaho physician, born in Moscow and raised in Twin. He's been working with St. Luke's since 2013 and has served within a variety of physician leadership roles, both locally and system-wide. He's currently the chair of the Idaho Board of Medicine, the chief of staff of the St. Luke's Wood River Medical Staff, the chair of the St. Luke's Health System Joint Chiefs of Staff, and chair of the St. Luke's Clinical Excellence Committee, where he'll be supervising the newly created Medical Director of Environmental Sustainability position that St. Luke's has just created. He lives in Haley, Idaho, with his wife, Lorena, and his stepson, Tyler, enjoys hiking, photography, and all sorts of winter activities. His commitment to environmental sustainability starts with his love of his community in Wood River and a strong desire to preserve the habitat we're so fortunate to experience living in Idaho. Please welcome David McCluskey.
Thanks, Ethan. Do I need to share my screen with the slides that I have?
Please.
Is that how it'll work for you? Okay. Sorry, I have to open the preferences. I apologize.
All right.
New computer.
Yeah, so just again, one more plug for sending in questions. If you've got them for the panelists, we will have about a 15-minute question and answer session after Dr. McCluskey talks.
Just make sure I can still do this. There we go. Apologize, folks. Okay. So I appreciate y'all's time, and it's an honor actually to represent St. Luke's as a physician, right, as a provider in this space. We often will hear from our operations leaders in terms of environmental sustainability, but as providers, we play a strong role in some of driving what the organization does. And as Ethan said, I've been in St. Luke since 2013, but I grew up in Idaho. And so part of my passion around this is, living in the space that I live in Wood River and watching, the ski resorts and the amount of snow we're getting and the lack of snow we're getting certain years, et cetera, and starting to see the projections out into the future as to, maybe a 10-degree increase in temperature if we don't start decreasing emissions by 2100. My grandkids may not get to see this same amount of snow. They may not be able to enjoy the things we enjoy here in Sun Valley. So for me, it's pretty personal in that we need to get moving on things. But from a healthcare standpoint, when we consider in the United States that healthcare in general has contributes to about 8% of our carbon burden across the country, certainly St. Luke's will have to take that into consideration. And when you see with that pollution graph moving up, with the temperature graph moving up, with the disaster graph moving up, there's no question that even an 8% contribution is huge. And whatever we can do to decrease that contribution in the future would be super beneficial. And that's why, in a lot of ways, healthcare systems across the country have worked hard to do this. Now, St. Luke's locally in Idaho, our mission is to improve the health of the communities we serve, right? So the folks in Idaho deserve as much attention around this environmental sustainability from a organization like St. Luke's as much as possible. We, when you look at reports like you see from the University of Idaho McCluskey Center's Idaho Climate Economy Impacts Assessment, and if you all would go through that resource, you'll see that there's a lot of different kinds of what we would call things that threaten, or they're the threat multipliers, not only for individuals, but for organizations when it comes to climate change. When you think about healthcare, right, we not only contribute some of the problem to the carbon burden, we also see a lot of the results of that because we're treating the folks in the community, right? We're trying to improve the health of the patients in the communities that we serve. And so we see the effects of these threat multipliers. And so we kind of get it from both angles. And to us, that makes it very important to pay attention to this, move forward with work on this, et cetera. And so when you think about from a healthcare standpoint, the threat multipliers include temperature-related disease and illness, water-related illness, air quality impacts. And when you look at that McCluskey study, the biggest impacts in Idaho are things like smoke, right, from fires, high temperatures, where we get things like more water or vector-borne diseases because ticks can live longer. We get more Rocky Mountain spotted fever in this area. We've had now patients that have West Nile virus, which you wouldn't necessarily see from mosquito-borne illnesses, except now that we have higher temperatures, et cetera. Food safety, nutrition, distribution, huge important thing, right? For our underserved populations, our at-risk populations, food deserts, all these kinds of things, they still do exist. And climate change can impact how we are able to do and serve our patients with proper nutrition, making sure they get distributed the proper nutrition, et cetera. And then finally, mental health and wellness, right? Not only for our patients, but also for the folks that are working within our healthcare organizations. When we look at the number of patients that have asked us to consider sustainability as an important component, 94% of our patients, so 94% of the people that we serve, that we're dependent on improving the health on, would like us to work in an area of sustainability. As a large employer for the state, we have over 64% of millennials now would work for a company that works and looks into sustainability issues with ESG, et cetera. We have to consider that, right, as one of the larger employers, but also as someone that we're having staffing issues. These are one of the headwinds that we're seeing when it comes to healthcare, and some of the struggles we'll be dealing with is getting adequate staff, making sure people want to work at our organization. And so for all these reasons, we find that working on the environment is super important, which is part of the reason why we built this medical director position that Ethan discussed just recently, and working on continuing to build things within St. Luke's itself. So what has that journey sort of entailed thus far? Well, I need to take a step back and say, what can we do about it? What have we done about it? And why is this a journey? So when you look at the objectives that we've had lately in terms of environmental sustainability, we've wanted to open up knowledgeable discussions. This series, right? This healthcare series is part of that, what Ethan and Stephanie have put together. We want to act on environmental topics that are not only have materiality to us, right, as St. Luke's health system, but also to our communities. Again, we want to improve the health of the communities that we serve. And so within that, some of the guiding principles that we're looking at are, empowering our leaders to implement, reuse, reduce, recycle, follow environmental compliance regulation, and then conserve natural resources. Now, if you think about those things that we would talk about if we're talking about our strategic plan, you're looking at the bottom of this list, right? The must-dos, and even some expected to-dos. What we're trying to get to is we need to do just what to do, right? The purpose level type activities. And in order to get there, we recognize early on that it's a journey. We're not there. I'm not going to be able to talk about the major initiatives that the City of Boise has so graciously shared with the state. Idaho Power has graciously shared, because those are massive improvements that'll be helping in many ways from all the scopes of decarbonization, all the areas, and even up into the efficiency and leadership areas. We're still very much in healthcare, and particularly at St. Luke's, at the must-do, expected-to-do region, right? And we know it's going to be a journey, and look at what we're doing. That being said, we have established various domains where we need to improve sustainability. When we think about our accountability and our ability to collaborate, leadership sessions like this, right? These joint sessions where we're sharing information and trying to work together to improve our environmental sustainability within Idaho. Energy management, waste management, making sure our buildings are safe, making sure our buildings are built appropriately. Procurement, right, where we're talking about supply chains and who we're getting materials from, and making sure that they have some form of ESG policy as well. And then finally, the scope 3 type stuff, like the climate and transportation, where we're asking a fairly large workforce to potentially not think about taking a car every day, carpooling, riding your bike, having meetings on Teams or Zoom like I'm doing now. In the past, I would have been traveling to Boise to be meeting with you in person. And I think now, because of considerations like this, there's no reason for me to be traveling from Wood River and spending all that carbon to get to Boise when I could be equally effective, I hope, in front of y'all here on Zoom. Now, as a provider, I've never been perfectly effective on Zoom, and I think there's ways to improve that. That being said, I think it's a perfectly suitable way, and it's something that we have to consider as we're moving forward. So major projects that we've looked into, right? We've done these things like waste audits. And so we're looking at this early stage, like what can we do next? Making sure we know what our waste products are, looking at our supply chains and sustainability from that standpoint, and building teams that can look at supply chains and sustainability, and building a lot of teams to do these kinds of things. Our green team, which is now looking into what sorts of efforts could we do with decarbonization and moving forward within the national moves to move towards decarbonization with those kind of topics. So overall, we're in a building stage. I think that's the bottom line. But there's lots of projects, lots of ideas, and I'm really excited to be one of the supervisors of this medical director of environmental sustainability, bringing in someone with a bunch of experience and a bunch of great ideas so that we can move forward here at St. Luke's. And obviously, as one of the physician leaders, one of the providers that sees this impact every day, I am committed and dedicated to making sure that St. Luke's kind of continues to move forward, which is also part of this journey, right? We need to make sure we have leadership, et cetera. So want to just end with this quote from David Orr, and it's the idea that hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. Optimism at the bottom, right, leads back. It puts its feet up and wears a confident look. So these are the ideas that this is work. This isn't just we can hope and hope for the best. We can just be optimistic and everything will work out. It's work. Roll your sleeves up, right? We at St. Luke's are working on it. We still have sleeves and we need to roll up more, but there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think we're really excited to move forward. So appreciate the invitation and excited to be a part of the panel as that's upcoming.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Can you guys hear with this microphone? Yes, it's very loud in the building. So
Check with the Zoom.
yeah, check with the Zoom folks and see if they can hear.
Send me a chat and let me know.
David, I can see your face. Can you nod if you can hear me with this microphone? Okay, great. So we'll take questions from folks in the audience, both virtually and here in person. I'm going to greedily steal the first question and ask for Steve Burgos here about the city and how it's working with small businesses and local businesses to help them on their sustainability journey. I have a friend who runs a massage business that was interested in finding out how to reduce their carbon impact. And I told her I don't really know. I've also been approached by other people, and I know that in the paper, the city is interested in expanding their geothermal network. Is this something that the city is looking to support people in, either through figuring out their carbon calculation and how they can get to net zero, or how businesses in the downtown space can join into the green geothermal network?
Thanks, Dr. Sims. So I think a couple of things. One, we've set up, and I can't remember the name of that. We have a formal name for the group, but basically we're pulling together organizations across the city. We've had two, I'll say, work sessions with companies who are interested in these issues, whether it's a solid waste issue, carbon reduction. We're trying to get a better understanding of what their needs are. We're not 100% sure of, I think it would range from, a massage parlor might think of on a different scale, certainly a much different scale than, say, an Albertsons. So we're trying to figure out where's a sweet spot that we can provide technical expertise that will help move things along. The second thing I would say is we're piloting a couple of different concepts. One, in the solid waste program, we're offering free audits to small businesses, well, any business really, that if they contact the city, we'll have a team that comes out and does an audit of their waste stream. And part of that is several-fold. Is one, to identify areas for improvement. Two, a lot of times it leads to savings because we can shift some of the costs of the different waste streams that they have. And then three, it makes them feel better about, okay, now we're engaged and we're actually making some movement. So those are just two examples. I think the first one is one we're trying to grow. We had, like I said, we had 2 workshops so far, and we're going to continue talking about different topics to better understand what the community's businesses expect from us or need from us.
And just in terms of geothermal, is that something that anyone in the downtown space can talk about joining into? Big, small, what sort of resources do you have for that?
Sorry, I missed that part. So on the geothermal side, we just finished a geothermal design sprint where we brought in technical leaders, businesses who are connected to geothermal in the downtown to really get a feel for what's possible, but also what should be the priorities for the system. And I think the priorities that we're starting to identify now are infill projects. So we have a system, a network downtown, rather than expanding, because it's expensive to send pipelines, not saying that's off the table, but creating new pipelines is pretty expensive. We have a lot of buildings in the downtown core that the geothermal system runs right in front of and aren't connected. So one of our initiatives is going to be to start going out and talking to those businesses, getting an understanding of when they're going to be making HVAC improvements, and getting ahead of that to say, well, okay, before you make that decision, can we frame up an option for you? And so if you're a company that's interested in learning more about geothermal, we have I'm sure on the city's website, you can get to a point where you can find who to call. John Gunnarsson is our geothermal system manager. He'd be more than happy to talk you through kind of the things to consider, how it can get you connected to the system.
So I'm going to take the mic and ask the next question, which is for Adam at Idaho Power. And it's a combination question. I'm going to try to put them all together here. But because energy is instantaneous and it matters how much we use, but also when we use it. And because Idaho is a large agricultural state, so that when is during the day, but also during the seasons, how does solar, EVs, batteries come into this equation? And I'm going to add innovations. So pumped hydro and concerns around batteries with the geopolitical minerals that are needed for batteries. So that's a big question, but I'm sure you're up for it.
Yeah, thanks. Let me see if I can take it a little bit of a time. A little bit of it is related to the presentation I gave. I mean, we're going to use a lot of solar. It's a great resource to meet customers' needs. But again, when the sun goes down during that peak time, we lose that energy. And so again, from 8 o'clock to 12, that's really becomes the tough time for us. And that's where batteries come in, as I mentioned, is batteries can help us meet that 8 to 12 o'clock and dispatch energy that maybe previously came from solar earlier in the day that'll help meet that demand time, later on. One of the things that you're starting to see more of is electric vehicles. And certainly we like that because when you have an electric vehicle in our service territory, you are charging that vehicle from a relatively clean grid. One of the things that starts to become a little bit, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's just something we need to keep focused on, is the fact that most people charge their electric vehicles, guess what, during that same time, from 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock to 12, which is peak time for Idaho Power. And so, certainly what we will look at in the future as electric vehicles continue to expand is the idea of, either incenting either through a straight incentive or maybe reducing rates during that peak time, people not to charge then. Maybe you wait till, 11 o'clock is over and then you allow them to charge then, and you change the rate so that if they do that, they're incentivized to do that. So certainly other, there's other resources that help during that time. I saw a note about pump storage. We are keeping an eye on pump storage. The nice thing about pump storage is you do have, instead of the 4-hour duration batteries I mentioned with lithium ion, you tend to have more like 10 to 12 hours with pump storage. Pump storage projects, you'll see they will start to get more and more popular because, of course, they're clean too. One of the issues with pump storage can be the amount of time that it takes to permit those projects and the costs related to that. So certainly it's something that we are evaluating, but we have to make sure the costs are right on that front. Same with geothermal, frankly. Geothermal is good because it, again, will meet that, 8 to 12 time frame. Certainly, it'll also meet during the winter timeframes when we need that baseload resource. Geothermal tends to be a little bit more expensive, again, and that expense is usually related to how hard it is to find that resource. Idaho certainly is a good state for it, but to actually pinpoint where that resource is and to do that effectively is very difficult and costly at times. So really, to get to that 100%, again, hopefully this came clarity. We're going to need a diversity of resources, everything from solar, wind to batteries. And then we are going to have to look at resources that we don't have on our system now, which could be pump storage, other long duration storage. I'm sorry, Stephanie, can you remind me the last part of that question?
Yes, I think it was around geopolitical concerns and batteries, just because of the minerals required for some of those batteries.
Yeah, great question. And it is a big issue. Right now, supply chain in general is a massive issue in our industry. I think it is in a lot of industries. Just looking at lithium ion batteries, lithium carbonate's gone up, 400% year over year in terms of price. And of course, the lead times have really increased as well. We need more, whether it's mining or manufacturing, we need more manufacturing in the US, period, paragraph. Like, we need more of it. We are very, very, as the question notes, dependent on, especially China, for battery cells and modules. Here's the good news. The Inflation Reduction Act that was recently passed in the United States will provide incentives for both mining and manufacturing in the United States. It's actually one of the biggest parts of the bill. And so with those incentives, we think you will see an increase of companies doing it in the United States. It's going to take some years. It's going to take some time, but it's certainly going to happen. And it needs to absolutely happen because right now we are very, very dependent on China for the cells, the modules, the energy segments, really for solar products, for wind products, almost every product, we're pretty dependent on China, and we need to have some autonomy in that regard in the future. So great questions, and hopefully that answered them.
Thank you. Next question is for Susie. Does Boise State collaborate with other state and regional universities on sustainability projects, either through sustainability work itself or through educational opportunities for their students, faculty, and staff? I'm wondering if there is a way to collaborate with agricultural experts at the University of Idaho, with management or law experts here at Boise State, electrical engineering, and ways to share that educational knowledge with students at other institutions, but also with people working in sustainability like yourself.
Great question. We do try and collaborate as much as possible. Just some examples of ongoing collaborations. We have CASE, the Center for Advanced Energy Studies, that involves University of Idaho, Idaho State, Boise State, INL, University of Wyoming, and they're providing opportunities for the different faculty to try out new ideas in collaboration with INL and give students research opportunities. And we have a CASE building down in Idaho Falls that they can go and travel with. And students have been working with other DOE sites to get some of those opportunities. University of Idaho just hired a sustainability director this past summer. So relatively new position or person in that position. We just hired a new sustainability director right after that. And then ISU is working on hiring a sustainability director. So we're very excited about working together to launch our sustainability initiatives across campus, working with our local communities and learning from the other states that have maybe had a few more years in this and a little bit more practice. So we are out there contacting our peers and working with them as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Dr. Arnett. That's great. So we'll finish this out. I think one of the themes about this is that we're not done yet. It's a journey. We're reliant on, we don't have all the answers. We're looking to collaborate and learn from each other. I think this is one of the things I love most about this space is the collaboration. And I'm going to finish our last, I was not able to get to all the questions either, got a lot of questions, but I'm going to finish out the last question for Dr. McCluskey. And that is with regards to St. Luke's and where we are on our journey and the 8% of the carbon neutral the carbon footprint that's contributed at this point and moving towards that carbon neutrality, what do you see as the biggest obstacles in front of St. Luke's in the next few years?
Well, when I mentioned the multiple areas that we're working on, when you think about decarbonization being one of the big ones, waste management, working on transportation, et cetera, I think our challenges currently are going to be just sort of catching up to the idea that many other health systems across the country have already realized, which is there's an urgency to working through to sign, for example, the Health and Human Services Health Climate Pact that was out there. And at St. Luke's, we're evaluating that, right? But we don't have necessarily all the ducks in a row to be able to do that in a way that's authentic, right? We don't want to necessarily just do it because everyone else is doing it, and we want to be part of all the other health systems signing it. We're actually being deliberate about, can we sign this pact? Can we go to 50% carbon decarbonization by 2030? And honestly, that's going to take a lot of work on the back end for us to just understand the data around what sort of what would that require? What levels of carbon do we contribute at the moment? How could we move forward? And at St. Luke's, we definitely like to be deliberate in that regard, but there's a urgency to this as well. And so trying to balance those two things is probably the biggest challenge we'll have, in my opinion. It's sort of it's an abstract thought, but I really do, that's, I think, our biggest challenge is abstract notion that there's an urgency to this, but there also is very much a deliberateness about the way we want to approach things, because we don't want to do it in a way that isn't authentic and that isn't impactful or meaningful to the communities we serve. And so I think that's our biggest challenge.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. McCluskey. And I want to wrap today by thanking all of our outstanding speakers who really have all become partners and friends in this journey. And let people know that, again, we plan to continue this lecture series in 2023. We'll be looking for expanding things a bit. I just want to share a few thoughts I have after a year of working in the sustainability space about the bright, hopeful future that I see. And it's because of people like the people that you've seen on stage today. There is no one solution to climate change, but there are thousands of them, and every one of us can do our part to make a difference. And doing your part to make a difference gives you hope and gives you energy and makes an impact on your neighbor's health and your parents' health and your children's health. So I think everyone needs to approach this with a hopeful eye, because you've heard today that the city of Boise is leading the charge on this. Our power is coming from a company that cares about this. Your local healthcare system is aware of this and cares about this and is working on making this better. The school down the street is educating their students who are driving them to do this, not just to promote education about it, but to make the campus they work and live on more sustainable. So the future is bright. We have a huge challenge in front of us, but we have an amazing group of collaborators working with us on this. And I'm very optimistic that continued conversations like this are going to help everyone bond together and make sure that we get to a point where we can all live a healthy and happy, sustainable future. So thank you everyone for joining today. Please email us at sustainability@slhs.org if you have questions, concerns. And again, thank you so much to all the speakers and attendees throughout this year.
Yeah.